Hi, everybody. Welcome and thank you for coming. My name is Michael Duzer from ESG, and with me here today is John. So John and I have the pleasure of being your hosts today, but we're not the main attraction. We won't be alone. You'll be hearing from our partners. So joining us today are Dr. Matt Nelson from Metro Nashville Public Schools and Ms. Carmen Hawkins from Cahokia Unit School District in Illinois. As I mentioned earlier, today is all about how to turn data into action for post-secondary success. So we're very fortunate and feel very grateful to have both a district level perspective on this issue as well as a school-based perspective. And we know data matters, but data doesn't just matter in the abstract, right? We know that the concept of data in the abstract can produce anxiety for a lot of folks, especially educators. But when it's used appropriately, we know too that it's one of the most powerful tools that educators have to change the world. With it, they can make better decisions, they can design better strategies, they can provide better supports to students, and that's what it's all about. You know, of course, that's the ideal. We know that districts experience some common challenges with data, and being able to anticipate some of those challenges, as you just put in the poll, and build some solutions into your data approach on the front end can really help move the ball forward and anticipate some of those challenges in a way that helps students and adults who support them succeed. So before we get too far ahead, I wanted to share a little bit more about who we are and what we're working towards at ESG. So ESG is a mission-driven consulting firm. We're committed to driving economic mobility through educational attainment. We believe that one of the best ways to do this is by enhancing connections between the education system and the workforce. And in order to do that, we work with stakeholders in K-12 and in higher education and in industry to improve policy and improve practice and bring those sectors together into better alignment with one another. As an organization, we really have two big goals. And the biggest overarching goal is that by 2030, we want to see 100 million working age adults have a post-secondary credential with labor market value. And we also want to see 25 million of those individuals be Black, Hispanic, and American Indian or Native Hawaiian, which would nearly double current rates. So those are ambitious goals, obviously, and in order to accomplish them, we need to, and we do, work with partners all across the country, and we work with states and we work with regions, but we also work with districts, and that's a lot of the work that I do at ESG. This is just a map showing a few of the districts that we've worked with across the country in the past few years to give you a sense of where we are and where we're helping.
Thanks, Michael. On OneGoal's side, here's some information about us and our organization if you're joining us for the first time. So OneGoal's vision is that every student will have an equitable opportunity to achieve their greatest post-secondary aspirations. We know that students from low and high income communities aspire to complete their post-secondary education at similar rates. But those from low income communities, the majority of whom are students of color, face enormous systemic barriers to earn their degrees and injustice made worse by COVID-19. This year, OneGoal will reach 15,000 students through our classroom-based model in 6 regions and impact another 67,000 indirectly through our leadership network in Illinois and Kentucky. You can learn more about the OneGoal by visiting the link in the chat. We partner with schools and districts to expand their knowledge and capacity. Ultimately, our aim is to transform post-secondary advising so that every student can define their own future. Our classroom model program supports educators and students by making college and career planning integral to the high school experience. It begins with the OneGoal course in the 11th and 12th grades and continues with remote support through the critical first year of a student's post-secondary pathway. Our OneGoal Leadership Network solution supports district and school leaders. It offers tailored coaching for better, more equitable student outcomes across entire districts. Although both of our programs are driven by data outcomes, today's webinar on our end will focus mostly on the Leadership Network program solution. To explain the program in action, we asked Cahokia High School to share how OneGoal supports district leaders to use data in our leadership network. In practice, our leadership network consists of 3 core components: a post-secondary readiness assessment, custom coaching and leadership guidance, and robust communities of learning with other district leaders. The end result is system-level improvement that lead to better student outcomes. We offer a set of services aligned with these principles, including data, in order to meaningfully change post-secondary outcomes for students. Now, I know we're here to talk again about how school leaders have a unique opportunity to leverage their available data to enhance student success. Before we hear from our friends from Metro Nashville Public Schools in Cahokia, Illinois, we'd like to do one last quick poll, right? So please take a quick moment to access the poll and share with us. Do you currently use data to inform your post-secondary education strategies? Okay, so we're starting to get some great data here. Speaking of data, and right now leaning a little bit more towards on yes to some extent. So I think there's going to be some great opportunities for us to really have our leaders talk about, how do we go from yes to some extent to like yes extensively, and some people who are not yet in data sharing, kind of like data informed post-secondary education strategies. That's great. Thank you for that. All right. So in order to drive change and improve system-wide post-secondary opportunities for young people, OneGoal created the Leadership Network. In this program, district leaders partner with OneGoal post-secondary leadership coach to create a custom and contextualized experience that accurately maps to the district's goals and opportunities. We start our partnership with the needs assessment grounded in our post-secondary rubric, which is in front of you. Our rubric was designed with leaders in the field like the Annenberg Institute, Collaborative for Social Emotional Learning, Network for College Success, and the National College Access Network. Our rubric here is a key foundation to our contextualized coaching, ensuring that we gather data on what the community of stakeholders cares about when improving post-secondary outcomes. The next visual is going to show you what a district partner would see on their needs assessment process. So again, we partner with the district to help them prioritize 2 areas in this rubric that the district wants to improve. We measure student improvement by ensuring that the district picks 2 priority student metrics that are relevant to the district and community. A number of these metrics are included in ESG's momentum metrics, as you'll hear from Cahokia's experience shortly. Cahokia, for example, chose to work on their continuous improvement cycles, and they wanted to improve their freshmen on track. On the visual here, you see the focus areas on the left side, and then you see kind of a visual mock-up of what a district might see when we begin our needs assessment process. This visual is a powerful starting point for our work that drives our long-term partnership forward. It's grounded in research, and it's driven by data. Additionally, our team also focuses our long-term partnerships that are grounded in improving student-facing post-secondary readiness metrics. Because we view systems-level work as a longer-term partnership, it's critical to ground our work in student-facing metrics that are important to the individual district and community. This slide, you see that we've kind of pulled and populated a number of indicators that we show what district leaders, demonstrate on the impact of longer-term systems change. Important to note, this data is not actual data from our districts, right? But it's a visual representation around how we help districts focus on improving what's important to them and their community. I'm going to turn it over to Michael so he can provide an overview of how ESG uses data to drive their practice.
Thank you so much, John. So wanted to share a little bit about our approach at ESG. So our focus as an organization is on college and career readiness. And we tend to work best with districts that are already committed to elevating their work in this area. And we also understand that districts are at many different places in their college and career readiness work, and that many districts are just now getting to a place where they can start to really prioritize this work again coming out of the pandemic. So with that in mind, we really make it a point to meet districts where they are in their CCR journey, whether that's sort of in the learning phase, in the designing phase, or in the implementing phase, or some combination of those. Sort of across those different elements, we help districts use data to drive systems level change. So data is really a cornerstone of our approach at ESG. But our approach is that it's not necessarily another thing to do or a thing that you do off to the side, but a tool to do what you've already committed to doing as well as you possibly can. So with that in mind, our approach leverages data at every step during that district journey to drive that equitable systemic change in college and career success that we're all here to learn more about and to drive at the end of the day. At the core of that approach are really the momentum metrics, which are these 8 metrics that you see here. And that's our framework to help districts measure what matters most for post-secondary success. And they track a student's journey from the beginning of high school through their first year of post-secondary education. And the reason, the sort of problem this solves for us is that all educators care about their students' success in education and life, in life after high school. But many of them don't feel empowered to influence it, since so much of that depends on what happens after students leave the K-12 system. And the momentum metrics are a way to answer that. They're so highly predictive of students earning a post-secondary credential after they graduate from high school, that if K-12 systems can improve these outcomes, then we can be confident that they'll improve post-secondary attainment as a result. And they're pretty well within a K-12 systems locus of control, especially those first 6, but not only those first 6. So we don't and wouldn't insist that a district that we're working with focus on all of these or even any of them necessarily. But we also want districts to understand that there are really concrete ways to move the needle on the long-term student outcomes that they care about most, and that success in their local context is possible when these things get prioritized. So let's make a transition now and see this in action, which is what you all came for, really. The most critical work that we do is being done in our districts and in our classrooms and in the one-on-one conversations that districts and teachers and students are having every day. So please join me in welcoming our guests, Dr. Matt Nelson and Ms. Carmen Hawkins, to share more about their district work. I believe Ms. Hawkins is going to get us started with some more information about Cahokia.
Good afternoon. I am Ms. Carmen Hawkins. I am the freshman associate principal in Cahokia High School. Cahokia, we're obviously located in Cahokia, Illinois. It's right outside, maybe 10 minutes outside of St. Louis. Our student population consists of 108 students, and we serve between 9th grade to 12th grade. We're right at the cusp when it comes to minority. Our minority enrollment rate is right there at 89.9. Our graduation rate is right there at 60.4%. And we're comprised of 11 schools and with only one high school and an alternative center that helps us service all of our students.
All right, and I think I'm up next. I am Matt Nelson. I am the Executive Director for College and Career Readiness for Metro Nashville Public Schools here in Nashville, Tennessee. We're a medium to large size school district with about 160 plus schools. We have the academy model here in Nashville, which guarantees all students in our traditional high schools are part of a small learning community where they participate in a career-based academy model. And other things on this slide that might stand out or seem a little off for us, particularly economically disadvantaged. We certainly have more than 35% of our students living in low income settings, but the way the state calculates is somewhat different than what the reality is. And so that number certainly doesn't represent the true reality of students living in poverty. And then the Ready Graduate Indicator of 30.8% is a Tennessee specific measure for college and career readiness, and it is based on students earning a score of 21 or higher on the ACT or completing early post-secondary coursework and accumulating enough credits to meet that indicator status.
All right, this is the part that I've been looking forward to. So we'd love to start with Dr. Matt Nelson. Matt, you are the Executive Director of College and Career Readiness at Metro Nashville Public Schools. You're the first person in the district to have that role. Tell us about the momentum metrics and why you decided to anchor the district's college and career readiness strategy in those data points.
Great. As you said, only 2 years in this position. So prior to that, we did not have this position or even this department in the district. Prior to that, various college and career readiness functions were dispersed across multiple organizations or multiple departments. And there wasn't much coherence or clarity around what our district-wide college and career readiness strategy actually was. So we wanted to be really clear as we formed this new department about what this work was really all about. And it felt important for us to ground that in student outcomes. Another aspect really was that our ultimate goal in terms of college and career readiness is for students to be successful in life after high school graduation. A big part of that is earning a post-secondary credential of some kind, but so much of that depends on what happens to students after they leave us. And so we needed a way to prioritize leading indicators of that ultimate goal that we actually have the ability to influence directly while students are in our buildings and under our care. So we learned about the momentum metrics framework through our participation in the New Skills Ready initiative. And we realized that it was a great way for us to do both of these things and provide a coherent frame for talking about the work and doing the work going forward. So these momentum metrics really provide a backbone for us for the strategy piece and for the measurement piece.
Thank you.
Carmen, as an associate high school principal to the district who is responsible for driving continuous improvement, how do you leverage data to address post-secondary readiness at Cahokia High School? What are some specific examples of the work that you are leading with OneGoal support?
Okay, well, we started with a plan of action for our freshmen on track, which we've noticed is a driving force in determining our high school student success and our graduation rate, which we know and we see is lacking based on our demographic. We knew to solidify success in any venture, you have to start off with a good planning process, and it's the most important thing for any entity in that process. So what we did was we started with planning to make data-driven decisions. And some of those things were just making sure that we identified and defined what college and career readiness looks like. We wanted to make sure that we had a definite definition and definite identifiers when that came about the college and career readiness. We also identified the appropriate analytical tools. OneGoal helped us provided us with one of those tools, the PDSA log, which helps us to collect data needed and monitor progress or lack thereof. This also helped us cycle through our next steps in obtaining data, measuring and managing data, analyzing data as well. During some of our meetings, when it came to our freshman success meetings with our stakeholders, we looked at the cycles for change, which has ultimately helped us to decide whether we need to adopt interventions, make some adaptations to those interventions based on survey data from our stakeholders, and sometimes just abandoning those interventions altogether. And that has kind of helped us proven not to be a good fit or whatever for our school environment. So sometimes we have had to abandon a few things.
Thank you so much. So Principal Hawkins, you just mentioned some of the tools that OneGoal has helped you use, and curious to hear about another one of those tools that both ESG and OneGoal have used in their respective district work. So Carmen and Matt, both of you completed different kinds of needs assessments as part of the work that you're here discussing today. How did data from those assessments help set the stage for the work that you've done since and for what you're prioritizing now? What were some of the key insights for you? Let's start with Principal Hawkins.
When it came to our PDSA cycle template, what we did was it provided us with the overall roadmap for the team, and it helped us track progress throughout our assessments. It helped us develop some of our SMART goal objectives as well. And that tool helped us establish the matrix to be tracked and help identify those outcomes as well. We also use that information or whatever to help create a data wall. We wanted to make sure that data was disseminated appropriately to all of our stakeholders, especially our educators. And we also make sure that we incorporate that in our cafeteria, in all different aspects of the school to make sure that that data is disseminated appropriately. So our PDSA helped drive that data and helped us look at those cycles and making sure that the data aligned with the progress of the goal. So.
Absolutely critical. Thank you for sharing. Matt, talk to us a little bit about how the needs assessment that you did with ESG has informed your work.
Sure. So we started with a self-reflection tool that proved very useful and beneficial. So we gathered input from various stakeholders. And what we found really in a nutshell was that in this district, we were program rich and we were partner rich, and that's great. Both of those are really good things. But what we saw was we had a lot of room to grow in terms of having a clear overarching CCR vision, which is understandable. I mean, we were a new department and really just starting this journey. But having that vision and communicating that vision effectively and consistently to internal district stakeholders and to external folks, the students, the families, and partners. We also saw that our data systems as a whole are not as robust as they could be or should be, and that beyond data access, we didn't have strong practice around data use. So these really set the table for the strategy and the staffing work that we've done since then, and then the data systems work that we're just now getting underway with.
Great, thanks. Yeah, thanks to you both, appreciate that. I also just want to, again, kind of voice over for our audience members. As questions come up for you, please feel free to add them into the chat, into the panelist session. We'll make sure we add those after the end of our scheduled questions here. This one, I just go back to Carmen. So Carmen, as most school leaders can attest to, and I'm sure you get a vast raise of hands on any panelist here who's a school leader, right? Your time is not your own. You know, you get caught up in the day-to-day of operations, work gets really, really busy. So the question here is like, why is it important to have protected time to understand data trends at Cahokia High School? And how is your role and the subsequent decisions you make as a school leader changed in adopting a data-informed decision-making lens?
Kind of like I was saying, we looked at collecting data and using that to make our decisions. But we also, we know that you look at the numbers, you run the test for data, you do all of the things that are need to do in order to come up with those cold hard facts. But what we learned was that data isn't the all and be all of everything. We needed to make sure that there was a balance between data-driven decisions and making sure that we understood data-informed decisions as well. The use of data we know is significant. We knew that was significant, and we were making sure that we use those. But what we started to incorporate is being able to ensure that we infused experiences, staff and student voice, and personal insight to assist in making decisions, and was just as important. All of those things we use to try to objectively measure throughout the staff and student feedback, which many times was survey-based. We filtered out a survey or whatever for both our staff and students and got those informed information, got that experience, got that student voice. And what we learned was that it increased our buy-in. Our students, they are all for our interventions because we not only provide them with a purpose for learning when it comes to the data, but we also incorporate and give them the autonomy in order to help with those decisions that are being made when it comes to their success. And the same thing when it comes to the staff as well, making sure that we provide them a voice based on their experience and based on some of the strategies or whatever that they're using, and incorporate those things in our interventions as well. And I think that buy-in is the most important thing, because without those students and without that staff kind of really focusing in on some of our interventions, they're not going to be successful.
That's great. Thank you. Michael, to you.
Great, and well said, and a good segue to our next question, which is, you know, as important as data is, and I think most educators agree that it is, it only impacts students if it informs the way that adults are doing their work day to day. So Matt, let me turn the camera to you, as it were, and ask, how is Metro Nashville embedding the momentum metrics or other data in job roles and routines, especially for school-based folks who have the most direct ability to influence student outcomes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's the right question. This might just be a Nashville thing, but you know, with any district strategy, there's the risk that that strategy will just live on a piece of paper or sit in a conference room at the central office and actually not change anything in the schools. And that's not what we want. That's not what can happen. So this is something that we're deliberately working on, and we may always be working on this really. But what we've done, we've started with the CCR advising staff. since they have some of the most direct impact on the momentum metrics. And in Nashville, we have a lot of different kinds of school-based CCR advising staff. So that's inclusive of school counselors, CCR coaches. Our academy schools have the academy coaches, and there's other roles. And each school looks a little bit differently. So although they're all working in that same CCR space, we realize it's not always clear to them or to us really who's responsible for what. There end up being gaps. There ends up being overlap, and as a result, we don't think that we're having the kind of impact and providing the quality of support that we could if everyone was playing from the same sheet of music, if you will. So last year, we took a fresh look at our CCR advising roles and responsibilities, and we went through a process where we aligned each of those roles and responsibilities to the momentum metrics so that at the district level and at the school level, it was clear for who was responsible for what. We want each individual to understand which student outcomes they were responsible for driving, and we want them to also understand what that entails in terms of specific activities or responsibilities. We want them to understand also what others are responsible for too. And so then it's just about putting puzzle pieces together to fit together in a way that ensures every student gets the advising support system that they need to meet the critical benchmarks towards post-secondary success. So we're now in the process of communicating and starting to implement some of these changes in partnership with folks at the district, our principals, and our school-based CCR advising staff.
Thank you. Super helpful.
And again, another great segue, right, for how our next question is set up. So one big thing that emerged from that for me is communication, right? If we're data rich, if we have all the things we actually can't communicate with our stakeholders, then we're not actually getting out the right informed decision making as to where it needs to be. So this question is going to be for both of our leaders here. What role does data play in the way that you communicate with key stakeholders, whether the district employees, students, families, or external actors, be it foundations, nonprofits, you name it? What do you think it takes to communicate with data or about data, especially data related to college and career readiness in a way that resonates? And let's start with Carmen.
We use data to develop a culture for learning for our staff, as well as our students in the school, with the regular flow of information from the data. Our data has been used to put in place many different mechanisms and to support those individuals, and also collecting learning surrounding by the data by pursuing questions. We make sure that a lot of our meetings start with some of the questions like, what is the data telling us? What are we learning from the data? How can we change our practices in light of the data? What other data needs to kind of be collected? How does the information from standardized assessments compare to the teacher's grades? Because those should align. Our local assessments or whatever are determining factors of how successful our students are going to be. So are those grades a good indicator as to how well they will do on those state assessments? So all of those questions kind of help guide us or whatever with our data-driven decision making. And it also helps us to poll our staff and poll our leadership team or whatever to make sure that those data-driven decisions are being put in place. Our teacher teams, they have access to this information that we used to help build collaborative relationships and kind of drive cycles of inquiry. We kind of want to make sure that the data is dispersed and shared throughout the school in hopes that it'll kind of better facilitate our professional climate and also our organizational learning just as a whole. In fact, we noticed that the data is kind of useful at Cahokia High School, and we wanted to make sure that we have a number of teams, not just our team, but a number of teams that are using this data to kind of help facilitate the data-driven process. We don't want to kind of gatekeep this information. We want to make sure that it's disseminating and it's becoming a culture and it's becoming a pattern to make sure that the data drives the meeting, the data drives the decision making that's happening after those meetings.
Great, thank you. Matt, same question to you. Communication, how are you using that to get across with college and career readiness?
Sure, I'll probably echo a lot of what Carmen said. I'll try not to duplicate what she said, but a lot of the same ideas. Part of the work really is to inform key stakeholders about data. We want them to be attuned, and we want them to know about key student outcomes, and we want them to understand how students are doing in terms of those outcomes. And we want to certainly make sure that we're celebrating the successes of our students in our schools so that everyone can hear good news and feel good about what they've already accomplished and progress that they've made, and that there's hope, that they feel hopeful about the prospect of even greater successes. But at the same time, to make sure that we're shining light on opportunities for improvement, the need to achieve even better outcomes for our students and creating a sense of urgency around that is critical. So one of the most important things is being able to balance that sense of pride and hope with the sense of urgency to do more. That's true no matter what stakeholder you're talking about. One of the other challenges that we think about is how to humanize the data to make it feel relevant and accessible. That's true for a wide range of stakeholders as well, but it's especially true when we're communicating with students, families, and other community members. To some extent, we want the objective data to speak for itself, but we also want it to tell a story for people so that they can relate to it and feel inspired by it. We don't want students and families to feel like they're being blamed or that they're somehow failing when outcomes aren't what we want them to be. So we need to make sure to remember at the end of the day, we're not really talking about data points. We're talking about living, breathing students that they represent. So it's important to build that context and narrative element and human touch into how we communicate anything about data.
So well said. I've been over here like nodding actively and realizing again that the spotlight's on you. So thank you for naming those points, because oftentimes when we get the data back, it's how do you tell the story? So thank you for that.
Yes. So Matt, in addition to what you just shared about how to tell the story, you've talked so far today about how you grounded your CCR strategy and how you're grounding your CCR advising staffing approach in the momentum metrics. Tell us a little bit more about the nitty-gritty data systems that MNPS uses to collect and to analyze and to report CCR data. What do you see as the major strengths at present, and what are you looking to enhance in the future?
Sure. So in terms of specific data points, some of our greatest strengths really around traditional metrics like attendance, high school graduation, student discipline, test scores, all of those traditional things. With respect to momentum metrics, specifically, we are strong in FAFSA completion and to some extent the advanced coursework participation. We have a lot of room to grow in other areas like ninth grade on track and especially critical college access metrics like college applications, college match, and college enrollment. In terms of data functions, our relative strengths are in data collection and reporting, but there's probably opportunity for improvement there as well. When it comes to analytic capacity, real-time data access and data use, we know we have a lot of room to grow there. And that's, we've launched a partnership earlier this month, a project earlier this month to take stock of our CCR data systems. And so we'll be engaging district stakeholders from several central office departments and from our schools to better understand our current state and put together a shared future state vision to make enhancements. So we don't assume that if we build it, they will come. So we want to make sure that we're working closely with those who would be responsible for making any changes in the schools and actually use the data at the end of the day. We understand that enhancing our data systems is essential for operationalizing our strategy and our staffing changes that I've already talked about. So really excited about this work and ready to dig in deeper.
Likewise, thank you.
All right, my last scheduled question that I have for Carmen here is as follows, right? So continuous improvement principles coupled with actionable data, have allowed you to make movement around your freshman on track rates at Cahokia High School. And I just want to say for the group, because Carmen, I want you to sing the praises, right? You guys have made huge growth in your freshman on track. I think a 15% increase from 2021 to 21-22. So fabulous work there. And again, I think it's a lot of it is like being really laser focused and improving on kind of a couple of specific metrics. So my question is, what future opportunities exist at Cahokia High School where the school can benefit from a data-informed practice and decision-making structure? So where do you see, your Cahokia's future driven with data-informed decision-making?
Well, our now that we've laid a working foundation for the climate culture, for behaviors, instructional strategies, and interventions that we're providing universally. We would like to start performing a need assessments for students who really need those tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. And what we're doing is we're laser focused on this year. Not saying that, 5-year at a glance, 10-year at a glance isn't important, but I really think that considering where we are when it comes to some of our assessments, our freshmen on track, being laser focused on this year is really, really important. So now that some of those universal things have been put in place, we really would like to start looking at those tier 2 and tier 3 intervention students. We started using the tracking process, and we incorporated the OneGoal intervention tracker. And this intervention not only addresses what interventions have been provided for all of our students, but also helps us assess what resources are available for students and also what they have already been provided with. This is going to really help us prevent overlap. We don't want to continue to provide things or whatever that are truly not working. So it helps us assess not only the needs, but what resources have already been provided. And the great thing about this assessment tool is it addresses all aspects of the learning environment and school environment when it comes to attendance, when it comes to behavior, and when it comes to course performance. So we can kind of look at a quick snapshot of students as a whole. And what we plan on doing and what we've already started doing is providing those students or whatever with the necessary mentors. We have been provided with a lot of resources in Cahokia outside of the classroom when it comes to restorative justice, truancy officers, even our security officers or whatever. We believe that all of those people are important stakeholders in the student success. So all of those people are invited to our freshman success meetings. And what we do is we're looking at that tracker tool, and we're providing mentors for our students, making sure that security, motivating, they know where those students are. If they were not invited to those meetings, they wouldn't know where those students are. They're also invited to look at our tracker device as well, so they can kind of motivate students. Our restorative justice, we're really looking at, again, outsourcing some of our resources and making sure that we're utilizing them effectively. A lot of buy-in has come from the teachers because they don't feel as if it's just their job. Student success is just their job. We're really trying to incorporate a village concept. And I think that by using that intervention tracker system, it really helps us identify where those needs are most effective and where they're needed.
Well said. Thank you, Principal Hawkins. Dr. Nelson, thank you both so much just for sharing your district's experiences with all of us. We are now going to transition for the last 12 to 13 minutes right now on kind of panel questions. And so if you have not already added your panel question, please do so right now. We'll have some questions that we'll start to come up with for both participants. Again, we're going to ask you to populate them in the Q&A section, and then we'll answer them in the order that we receive them. Our first question that we talked about, the first question we have in front of us is for both panelists, but it starts from the audience. It says that Carmen mentioned engaging student voice. I'm curious to know more about how both of the panelists' districts and schools have done this. If it's all right, we'll start with Carmen here on the answer. And Carmen, to give you a bit of think time, again, the question is student voice, right? How do you engage it? One thing that OneGoal does, and we have partnered with districts, is we have a post-secondary student culture survey, right? So that's one way that districts can directly engage with us to elicit student voice. I'm going to pass it to Carmen real quickly on how do we bring out student voice, which is critical to this work.
I can tell you what we've done so far and what our plan is for the future. What we've done so far is really surveyed our students, and we incentivize them or whatever to participate. Unfortunately, it's not ingrained for them to want to do anything added work when it comes to that aspect. So we do incentivize them or whatever in order to make sure that we have enough students that are participating in our surveys. So that is our first step in providing student voice. In the future, what we want to do is start inviting students to our freshman success meetings. We want to make sure that their voice is recognized, their concerns are recognized, and different things like that. I know that our counselor as well, she's making sure that she goes into each classroom at least one time a week and doing those surveys, making sure that those conversations are being had as to what is needed, what would they like to see, making sure that they understand our credit process, making sure that they understand the avenues for success. And there's a lot of discussion that takes place within that hour while she's in that classroom or whatever that she takes from those classrooms or whatever and brings to our freshman success meetings. So that is the way that we kind of incorporate our student voice without having them physically at our meetings. But in the future, we are starting in January to start inviting some students into our freshman success meetings or whatever, so we can make sure that that student voice is right there and readily available for any questions that we had. We just wanted to make sure that we did the groundwork because we don't want too many interventions and they're not being kind of handled effectively. So we wanted to wait until we were in our second semester so we can kind of identify leaders. We can identify students that would come and would make sure that their voices are heard.
That's great. Thanks. Same question, Matt.
Sure, and I'll preface by saying, of course, in the role I'm in, I look more through the district lens, and what happens in school buildings is most critical, and so it's hard to highlight. We have over 20 high schools, so it's hard to highlight specifically what each school does. But I can talk through the district lens. In terms of capturing student voice, it's often through formalized operational surveys. We have leveraged the Panorama student survey, student climate survey, which asks questions about academic press and culture of belonging and things like that. So that's a good starting point. We've also implemented a new tool to capture, at least from our upperclassmen students, what their post-secondary aspirations are, so that we have a response from every student in the district as to what they hope their post-secondary life looks like, so that we can start intervening if they're not taking the required steps to move towards their stated goals. We also, at the highest level, we have student members on our school board. So those are students that actually function on the school board just like the other 9 members. We have student advisory councils, and we have ambassadors from each of our high schools that make up a representative council of student voice that talks with the superintendent and her chiefs on a monthly basis. And since college and career readiness has elevated as one of the district's primary areas of focus, that is often what is talked about with our high school students. And so just all of that collectively, we hope that we're getting a representative sample, at least, of most of our student voice. We're also engaging in a partnership with Vanderbilt University to do some student focus groups for how students make decisions around post-secondary, early post-secondary opportunities, and how that connects to some of these other issues.
Thanks, Matt. Michael, to you for the last, or maybe the second to last question.
Yes, we shall see. So another question for both of you from the audience. So how are these frameworks being used in the middle school space, and what does this look like for the earlier grades? And I think I would sort of extend that even beyond the frameworks to this work of college and career readiness in general. Matt, would you care to start?
Sure, I can start with at a high level, college and career readiness, as I just mentioned, is becoming more of an area of focus across the district. We think of it traditionally in the high school space, but we know that's not correct. It's just where we go to or we navigate to. All that to say, our superintendent made the call 2 years ago that college and career culture in middle schools is the most important thing to focus on. And so we've really made a significant investment in AVID, which I'm not saying you have to go to a program, but it is a programmatic approach for ensuring that there is a college and career ready culture established in all of our middle schools. So each of our 30 middle schools has the AVID program, the AVID system implemented at this point. And so we're really leveraging that as the primary college and career culture builder, if you will, in our middle schools. Our state also provides K through 12 college and career milestones. And so we're leaning into those a little bit in terms of what we can do in the lower grades, elementary school, in terms of career awareness and career days and college exposure and things like that. And then really scaffolding that out so that we're following the guidance of the state, but we're kind of making it our own as we go.
Thank you so much. So Principal Hawkins, I know you're the principal of a high school, but would still love to hear your perspective and insight into what the work looks like or could look like at the middle school space.
Well, actually, we just had our staff leadership meeting, and we're starting to look at our college board for our PSATs and making sure that we're assessing our 8th graders that are coming over. Using that assessment and also partnering with another intervention that we're using for our 9th graders to incorporate them in their second semester. So that transition from 8th grade middle school to 9th grade or whatever will look and be a lot more seamless. We're also looking into a summer partnership with our local university to kind of incorporate not only our CTE programs or whatever, but also some academic enrichment things or whatever that we could do with our 8th graders, again, for their transition to be a little more seamless. Also, we are trying to make sure that we incorporate our Reading Plus program or whatever. It's an enrichment and intervention program that we're looking to, again, incorporate in the second semester at our middle school. We have one, and just trying to see what that assessment data could provide us with after that 3rd quarter, looking at that for placement of students and programming for students.
Fantastic. It's the next frontier, so it's great to hear what's happening in the field around this work. So we are about 5 minutes until the hour. So with that in mind, I know a lot of folks are getting ready for their meetings in the next hour. We will go ahead and start to wrap up. Just want to say thank you to everybody in the audience today. We do have one last poll question. Really this time, our last one. So you can tell us how you want to stay connected in the future, because we would certainly like to. So the poll should be launching here in a moment. I would also add, please do follow us on social media and visit our website to learn more about the solutions that we offer and the support that we offer, which we also want to make sure you understand is we understand that every district is different. So both of us, in terms of us organizationally, really believe in customizing what we do to meet the needs of schools and districts. So thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.